we're going to start. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Welcome to our National Partners Series. It's a series of webinar where federal organizations, or in this case, those supported by federal funding that are relevant, obviously, to the aerospace industry, are provided an opportunity to share information with businesses and their partners. This series is really an opportunity for aerospace players such as you to get a better understanding of the various federal government programs and the offerings that they support. Today, we're very, very pleased to hold Sudipa Chatterjee and Ahmed Tanashi, both advisors in business development at Mitacs. Sudipa and Ahmed will discuss how Mitacs supports aerospace SMEs who are interested in working with universities and colleges to further innovation. Before passing the mic to our guests, I will ask Stephen Carniello, our MC for today, and the DAIR Green Fund Manager to tell us about a few housekeeping rules. Stephen?
Thank you, Maurice. Before I introduce our speakers, like Maurice said, I will go over a few housekeeping items for our webinar. So today the webinar will be recorded and available to the participants afterwards. The webinar slides will be provided to participants afterwards. During the presentation, we ask that you keep your microphone on mute. However, if you would like to remain on camera, please do so. After the presentation, we will have an open Q&A session. If you would like to come on camera, unmute your mic, and ask your question, please feel free to do so. Or you can also use the Q&A function available on the top bar of the Teams application. With that, I would like to introduce Ahmed Tanashi to start the Mitacs webinar. Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Stephen and Maurice. It's great to be here with my colleague Sudipa. And yeah, we'll be talking to you today about supporting collaborative research in aerospace. So let's get right into it. Starting with the high level, a little bit about Mitacs. So Mitacs is really about these partnerships for Canadian innovation that are designed to deliver solutions that drive economic growth, focus on productivity, and the key for us is providing support for that meaningful change to improve quality of life for all Canadians and kind of everyone around the world as well. Tightly related to that purpose, our mission is to be a catalyzing force for Canadian innovation. So we are a connector, we are a network, we are able to help build these world-class communities of innovators and these collaborative projects that really help deploy top talent to these real-world challenges that industry and SMEs are looking to address. So really, we're looking to transform the system and help support it. So a little bit more about Mitacs, maybe a little bit of background for those of you not too familiar with us. Mitacs is a national independent not-for-profit organization supported by federal and provincial dollars that fosters growth and innovation, again, kind of pertaining to our mission from the previous slide. We are connected to over 117 post-secondary partners, so universities, colleges, polytechnics across the country. We've been in operation for over 2 decades. And as far as our company reach, we have partnered with over 7,000 SMEs, businesses, and nonprofit companies as well. With that said, with all these partners and with all the post-secondary institutions, we've been able to support over 50,000 research projects coming through our funding model. And to support all of this, we have a huge network of employees, business developers like myself and Sudipa, among other supporting staff across the country, with 4 regional hubs being Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa, but really coast to coast. And we truly, truly mean that. So Mitacs really supports all stages of the R&D and commercialization kind of process. So if you're thinking, hey, does what I'm doing right now really apply? The answer is probably yes. So if you're looking to, put together an idea, looking to do some of that fundamental research into kind of, is this idea feasible? Does it work? Maybe exploring that. We've supported a lot of projects in that space. Maybe you would be looking to prototype or validate something that you've been working on for a little while. Maybe even going through production and deployment. So you're past that prototyping and validation stage. And if you're looking to do things like production and then in the future even go into scaling up those pieces, like finding out how to scale up, where to scale up, when to scale up type of questions are all things we've seen come through our programs. And finally, maybe you're looking to expand to new markets, whether it's within Canada or internationally. We support in a large variety of these projects as well. So really, again, all stages of kind of that R&D and commercialization continuum, there could be a fit for Mitacs to help fund that. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Sudipa to talk a little bit more about Canadian aerospace with relation to Mitacs.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. I'm very happy to talk a bit more about where Mitacs stands in terms of Canadian aerospace. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? Perfect. So, as my colleague Ahmed mentioned, Mitacs fosters collaboration essentially between academia and industry. How? It's by attracting talent to these projects to help carry out the objectives of projects. It'd be basically attracting talent and bringing the expertise and resources from the academic institutions too that come with the talent attraction. Sometimes if a project is completed well, a company may want to re-engage this talent for the next phase of the innovation. So for example, as Ahmed mentioned, if you're in the phase of deployment, well, maybe you want to move to the next stage. Or if you're now set to scale up and you need academic expertise and talent there, we can be involved there to help you recruit this talent. Now, if you're now securing that, you might be able to now create an entire pipeline of talent for yourself if you as an SME would like to keep working with an academic researcher or an institution. So talent attraction, pipeline creation, this is where we can help. Now, since 2017, in aerospace, we've been able to support almost 900 interns for projects in this sector. Aerospace companies have been able to work with the likes of Concordia University, Dalhousie, University of Manitoba, Toronto Met, and of course, the University of Toronto to be able to do projects. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the colleges, because we do know that the colleges such as Centennial, such as Mohawk, they do have that technical expertise to work with companies, which they already do. But now, if you think of that in terms of Mitacs projects, well, we can support that as well, because that is, again, a collaboration between academia and industry. Next slide, please. So, through the research projects which Mitacs supports with the funding, it has often led to new commercial products or services, both at the domestic level and at the international level. Last year in 2022, Mitacs grants of over $10 million were awarded in the aerospace sector for projects. So we're very happy to support this arena. Now, major players have included Bombardier, Canadian Aviation Electronics, Pratt & Whitney, Airbus, and they are our regular users. They are current users as well of Mitacs programs, so we're very happy to work with them. And if you can just go to the next slide, thanks. But aerospace aside, most of the companies that we do work with happen to be SMEs, even in other sectors. If I were to loop back into now aerospace, if there are SMEs involved, say, in the supply chain, they want to move to the next phase of the innovation roadmap. They want to now look at deployment, or they want to scale up whatever their product is, so they can work with bigger companies like Bombardier as part of the supply chain. We would love to be involved and help out here with our funding. All right, so let's talk about some projects that we have done. All right, so these are the different areas that we've covered. This is quite the gamut of areas that we've covered through Mitacs funding. So all the Canadian aerospace projects that we've been involved in. So whether it's material sciences, looking at polymers or alloys, manufacturing, looking at forging, welding, AI, supply chain optimization, that's fallen into AI, drones, cybersecurity, as well as training, if it's pilot training or crisis management training. These are all projects across aerospace and aviation that Mitacs has helped to fund. So quite exciting, we would say. Next. So most of the projects, unsurprisingly, have been in Quebec and Ontario. And that's 84% of the pie, with Quebec taking a bit more of it compared to Ontario. That being said, other provinces have done projects, Mitacs projects. So we've had Mitacs projects in aerospace in BC, Alberta, Manitoba, also Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, as well as Saskatchewan. So these sectors we're covering all across Canada because, as Ahmed mentioned, we are a pan-Canadian organization. We're a not-for-profit that goes from coast to coast. So if we were to look at how we've been doing at Mitacs in terms of aerospace projects that have been submitted, and I'm giving you the example of Ontario, considering it's one of the largest, has one of the largest pieces of the pie there that I showed you. Back in 2017 to 2018, that fiscal year, there are about just over 30 projects submitted that year in Ontario of Mitacs projects in aerospace. That number steadily grew, as you can see in the graph. At the end of 2021, we hit about 80 aerospace projects a year in Ontario that was submitted. Of course, because of the pandemic, that number dipped, but there were still aerospace projects submitted. Now we are post-pandemic, and 2023, that fiscal year just closed out last month. And now we are over where we were in 2021. We're about 85 projects a year that were submitted at Mitacs from Ontario in aerospace. We are essentially, if we look at the trend, going onwards and upwards in terms of the projects which we support here. Next slide, please. So these are some of the examples of success stories that we've had in aerospace. So this one particularly, this one involves developing the next generation of drone technology, and this was done at the University of Calgary. The next one that we have was a project done with Bombardier from the University of Toronto. The following was done by, involved a company called Humanitas Solutions. So they were the company that worked with Polytechnique Montreal, where an intern was involved to help design drones that would deliver humanitarian efforts in different areas. And finally, there was a project that was done to develop an in-flight system that monitors a pilot's physical condition when they're flying through wildfire areas. And that was done in conjunction with Conair Aviation and Latitude Technologies in partnership with the University of British Columbia. So these are some of the success stories that we've had. And with that, I will pass it over to Ahmed.
Awesome. That was a really amazing overview of aerospace at Mitacs. So now I want to come back in and talk a little bit more. You've heard Mitacs, you've heard about all these projects and sector pieces of the sector we've worked with. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, how the Mitacs funding works. So you've heard the model works, you've seen the model works. Now it's time to talk about the model. So there are three main entities or players in a Mitacs project. So for a Mitacs project to happen, we need all three. We need a partner organization, SME, company, not-for-profit, that is interested and is able to provide a cash contribution to the project. We need the academic partner or partners, where it's a college or a university that is able to hold tri-council funding and basically serve as that academic expertise for the project. And then finally, we do need an intern or interns for the project that would be doing the work, setting out the objectives between the partner and the academic institution, really doing the work and helping to reach those goals that you're looking to do with a project. So how does this all happen? So the simplest building block of a Mitacs application for funding is the internship unit. So one unit of Mitacs funding is one 4 to 6 month block for one intern to spend time on a project. So the total budget is usually around $15,000 for an internship unit, with half of that, the $7.5K, coming from the partner organization, and the other half being contributed by Mitacs through our funding sources. So we put that together and we send the internship unit out as funding to the academic institution to administer for the project. So that is the simplest block. Now, Why do I talk about it in a block format? Well, because Mitacs can adapt to your pace and needs. So we really have had a lot of smaller projects where it's 1 or even 2 units of funding, where you have, 1 researcher intern, 1 professor, 1 partner company, and you have that 4 to 6 month time frame to get a scope completed. A certain objectives completed moves you forward, which is great. These are fantastic, and these are very popular. But we also are able to scale that unit up. So really, the limit from a company perspective is your imagination and project scope. And I'm being honest here. What you need to accomplish and what resources it takes to accomplish that are kind of the things we look to ask about when we're trying to scope these projects. So you can have as many of these 4 to 6 month internships as needed for a project scope. You can do them all at once. So you could have like 10 units all for the same 4 to 6 month period and have 10 student interns working at the same time, or you could have, multi-year. So you could have units spanning these 4 to 6 month blocks back to back to carry out maybe a 2-year long project scope. So really flexible in that sense to be able to build it up to suit your needs, of course. There is the capacity to add multiple partners or multiple academic institutions and multiple researchers. So again, really allowing for collaboration within the model is something very important to us and something we've seen to help make some very successful projects as well in the past. This adaptation or this ability to scale helps tackle those more complex projects. When you're going through and you're like, okay, this is a larger scope project that I need to do. It's very easy to kind of scope it out and make it fit within the Mitacs model. And then also to look at achieving longer term goals with those longer scoped projects, like I mentioned. So with that being said, key points to take home, again, the Mitacs funding model is for smaller, large scale projects, everything in between, scales from 10K or 15K to multi-millions of dollars of funding. The application process, so there is an application form. We put that together. It's pretty quick and simple to put together, and it's a peer-reviewed application. The other key thing I'll mention is that it's a non-competitive funding stream. So Mitacs is non-competitive. It is purely based on the merit and content of the application that you put forth. And we're proud to be able to say that as a fairly high success rate due to that, over 90%. After an application is officially submitted. So those are kind of the key points to take home at this time. And then to kind of wrap it all up neatly as far as this piece of the content, you also have access to us, the National Business Development Network across Mitacs. So really, we can plug in at a number of different areas and also provide a number of different supports. So we're closely connected in with both academia and industry across the country. So we have a really good bird's eye view on the ecosystem, the expertise, where it is, maybe what's going on in the ecosystem right now as well. If you're curious about other regions, we help do a lot of network matchmaking. Sometimes people don't even know who is at a certain post-secondary institution that does the kind of research or work that would specifically really benefit their collaboration and be able to come together for a really nice project. So we can ping kind of nationally, which post-secondary institutions have that expertise and are interested in taking on a project. We help with, designing these roadmaps, like I said, scoping and really helping to make sure your innovation solutions have this kind of support behind it from Mitacs. And then as well, we try to be a trusted advisor. So we really are committed to you. This is about what your needs are and how we can support them. So even if you don't see something listed here, it's always good to, come to us, and we can definitely see what we can do and how we can help. So with that being said, I'll pass it off to Sudipa for this last little bit.
Okay, so the question is, we've given you all the information here. Hopefully we've made it intelligible, but we're here to answer questions if not. But how can we work together? So we came up with the idea of the reverse pitch in concert with DAIR, who's helping us. If, as a company, you want to develop a product or commercialize it. These are all the things that Ahmed mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation. If you want to scale up, or if you have an idea and you just want to the research to look into whether that's good enough to pursue before you go ahead and go into production, for example. Develop a 10-minute pitch. It's just a 10-minute pitch that does not have to be polished. We just want to hear the idea that you have. What we want to do is we want to bring in academic researchers, and they will listen to your pitch, your 10-minute pitch, which doesn't have to go into a lot of detail, as I mentioned. And then Mitacs and DAIR can work to have you have a meeting with those academic expertise. So what is the goal? The goal is to match SMEs, or even if you're a startup, that's fine. Larger companies, of course. But we want to match you with the right academicians with the right expertise to solve a particular problem that you right now have in terms of where you are in your innovation roadmap, I should say. We would like to have something in June. The dates are to be determined, and it'll most likely be a virtual event where each SME will pitch what their idea is or the problem that they're trying to solve in 10 minutes to a panel of academic researchers who we believe would be the right people to be able to help you. Okay, the other SMEs will not be seeing this. This will just be a 10-minute slot between you and the academic panel, and then we'll go to the next SME and the academic panel. If you're interested in something like this, then let Samantha Glover know, and then we can work on something together to help you get the right information and expertise and source of talent to get a project going. And with that being said, I'll hand it back to Stephen. And I should say, actually, thank you to our funding partners. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you. So our funding partner, the federal government, of course, and all the provincial governments. So thanks to our funding partners. Thank you. And questions, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Sudipa, for all the insightful information about Mitacs. A little tidbit is I was a Mitacs student, an intern, so you can see how it has benefited the aerospace industry, because I did do an internship with the aerospace industry and gained a lot of experience with that. So Mitacs is definitely worth it in my eyes, and it's great for students to gain the experience they need right out of school as well. So just a little tidbit, but right now I'd like to open the floor to any questions from the participants. If you have any, please put them into the Q&A section, or you can write them in the chat and we'll be monitoring them to ask them to Sudipa and Ahmed. Or if you'd like to come on video, please open your video and ask the question. I'm going to start with a quick question here. For the SMEs and the university or colleges, when they join together to try and work on a project through Mitacs, if the SMEs and the colleges or universities are in separate provinces, do they still qualify for Mitacs programs?
Stephen, that's a really good question. And yes, they do, because we mentioned that we work across Canada. If, for example, you are an SME located in Ontario, but the expertise that you're looking for is all the way out in BC, the academic expertise, well, that's not a problem. You'll work together and that will be a Mitacs project. The only thing that we ask, because this must be a true collaboration, there must be time that the intern who does the project, or interns who do the project, if you have more than one, must spend time at the partner site. So if they're a student at UBC, for example, they must spend a minimum of the 25% project time at the partner site here in Ontario. And that's just an example. But there must be an in-person interaction here. I hope that answers.
Okay. No, that's very good. And that comes to I was going to come to my second point was the requirements of being on site or virtual or hybrid, now that, since COVID, we accommodate different ways of working. So that makes sense. So 25% minimum is required at the partner organization site. correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally a 50-50 split is fantastic, but 25% is the minimum that we ask for an intern to be at either site. Ahmed, is there anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to quickly add a little bit to that because we've had cases where, say, a company is all remote. Those do exist where they don't have an office space anymore, this age post-pandemic world, and even beforehand. So in those cases, I think the best thing to do is talk to us kind of to understand, or any business development rep you happen to be in contact with. Obviously, we're here today, but there's lots of us across the country. And we're able to help kind of navigate that for you because it's not always, I guess, a hard stop in those cases. We at Mitacs, we want that collaborative project. That's the reason we ask for that in-person collaboration piece where they actually go on site as well. So that's the spirit of the program. So as long as we can kind of figure out the right information from you, then we can help determine if it is indeed eligible or if maybe it isn't a fit, unfortunately. So definitely just wanted to add that in.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions from anybody in the participants?
Yes. Hi, Stephen. I have a few questions, I
Yes.
guess, if I can.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Excellent presentation and obviously many success stories. But can you define the SME? Can it be an entrepreneur or does it have to be a registered company? Or, of course, it could be a company, right? A true manufacturing company. But can it be a one-man show type of thing?
So you must be incorporated. If an SB must be incorporated, and I believe the way we define it is under 500 employees. Is that correct? Yes, under 500 employees is what we would define as an SME.
Okay, great. So now, what you said is the partner company and and Mitacs, they contribute 7,500 each for a 4 to 6 month module. What if some of these projects, materials, tooling, testing could be a lot more expensive than that. How can I get more money if I need it? Because, it's a good amount for sure, but sometimes things can, go a little over budget very quickly, in some of these projects.
Ahmed, do you want to tackle that? Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Great question. We love to help kind of support this. So in essence, that's kind of where Mitacs focuses is the personnel training aspect, the intern training aspect, and being able to connect you with that talent. That said, we are not, we do not need these to be quote unquote exclusive. We have joint applications through organizations like NSERC, like SHRC, so the National Science and Engineering Research Council. We have a great offering with both their university and their college stream applications. Those, of course, are more, I would say, a little bit more restrictive because you have to meet both NSERC and Mitacs requirements to apply. And the post-secondary institution definitely needs to be engaged on those because they would be the ones doing the submission and supporting you in it. But that is a way to get enhanced leveraging. So being able to have more money for, like you said, those project expenses, those larger scope projects where you need to purchase equipment. I will say out of the $15,000 that you saw for the one unit, a minimum of 10,000 of that has to go towards paying the intern involved, but there is 5,000 of that for each unit available for some project expenses. Obviously, it won't cover a whole new pieces of equipment by any means, but it is there to help, if there's software that needs to be purchased specifically for the project, or if there's anything else, like maybe some prototyping costs, like those things can be basically covered by the 5K in that. So there are options, and say you have funding from another source, as long as you can put industry cash in separately for Mitacs, it can't be leveraged to two like federal organizations at the same time. Per se, but if there is cash on hand to be able to put towards a Mitacs project to tackle specific objectives, we play nice with funding organizations. Usually we are not the kind of roadblock in being able to mix and match what supports what aspects, as long as you're not kind of doing anything where it's double leveraging. I hope that makes sense. It's a bit of a complicated answer because it's a lot of situational stuff. So I'm trying to give you the kind of the high level on that.
Okay, no, thank you for that. And then at the end of the module, how do you measure success, or how can I, if I haven't finished the project, or when I say if the project hasn't finished, or we have to keep extending, is there another review process, or how does that actually work?
So that's a really, really good question. So I should say right off the bat, Mitacs doesn't have a renewal process. Okay. What we do say is this is something what we do whenever you have, if you have a project idea, we'll sit down with you and we'll go over the actual scope of everything. That's where we're advisors and we want to make sure that we've understood everything. So when we go through the proposal, we can say, you know what, this might take another module. And if you don't need it, that's a different thing. But because we don't have a renewal process, if you find that you have, say, a project that you thought was going to be 8 months, and then you realize I actually needed 4 more months to make it a year-long project, we do not want you to be stuck at that point going, oh no, I need to reapply again. We don't want you to be stuck there. So we'd say, talk to us. We'll talk to you about what we believe is really the scope in terms of a timeline for your project.
Okay,
We'll
so
set, we'll,
if the project, if we start the project and we say, you know, it might be a 2-year project, can you fund something like that? And it's
Yeah.
like 4 modules, and you know, it ends up being $60,000 or whatever it comes out to.
Exactly.
So
If you've
okay.
Yeah, if you've got your objectives and you go, these are my objectives, this is what we're trying to work on. We believe this is a 2-year project, and this is what the partner contribution is. We'll look at that and we'll say, this is what you can do with X amount of dollars, and this is what you can cover over 2 years. And yes, it can, and as something Ahmed pointed out, it can be, 4 to 6 months, or it can be definitely 2 years. So we can definitely do 2-year projects, 3-year projects. That's not a problem.
Okay. And the funds, how are they paid out? In a lump sum over a period? And do you guys administer, like, do you validate how they're spent, I guess, or for lack of putting it a better way?
Ahmed,
Yeah, I'll
go
take
for
this
it.
one. Sure.
Go for it.
So, yeah, great question. So the funding, the way it works is basically when you submit the application, because we have such a high approval rating, and to avoid trying to make sure projects can start quickly, we invoice the partner right away for the first the start of the project, basically, like what the first 4 to 6 months would look like. So Mitacs invoices directly to the partner. When the partner pays us, we match that funding to make that whole unit, that module, and then the entire block, or blocks if there's many at the same time, get sent directly to the post-secondary institution. So it's nice about this is the post-secondary institution is the one who will be basically managing the funds, being able to say, hey, they're on our payroll for the awards to get paid out, so you don't have to add them to your payroll type of thing, and they will help with managing the funds. And that ties in nicely to your previous question in that you're not working on this alone with us. There's a post-secondary institution, there's a researcher, there's going to be students involved. So in my experience, I work a lot directly with the colleges. They are far and away great at helping scope these projects with industry. I'm sure the universities are the same. I just don't interact a lot with them, but they are great at helping us also validate, hey, this is an 8-month project, or hey, maybe you do need to think about, 2 years or 12 months or whatever it happens to be. So in that same vein, we make sure that everyone's okay with how the funding's set out before the project's even applied for. Everyone needs to sign. There's a budget sheet that we go through to make sure, the partner, the academic institution, everyone's on the same page for how the funding's going to get used. And then it goes through from there. So invoicing can either be done by term or by year. So there's flexibility because we know that, maybe you don't have the whole year of cash to front at the start of the year. We can do it, by every 4 to 6 month time period, invoice and have that payment process come through.
And I guess my last question, since sorry to be asking so many, but it's interesting. So the academic institution, do they charge for the use of their facilities and stuff, or do they throw that in as part of the deal? Let me put it that way.
Usually, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. So sometimes we'll take a look at budgets, for example, and Usually the idea here is if you happen to be working with a researcher whose lab has the equipment, that's the resource that they're bringing. That's what the talent is pulling, right? To work on this project with you. You should be able to tap into that. Now, of course, for example, you have a professor, but maybe the department has a machine that they share, and that requires payment for the use of it. If that's the case, remember what Ahmed said, you've got that flex fund of $5,000. Part of that could go towards equipment expenses for you to be able to use for this project.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sudipa and Ahmed, for answering that question for Spiro. I have Michael here who has a question for you. Michael, you can unmute and ask the question.
So this is a duplication for what I posted in the chat, but I thought it might just be easier to explain it. I'm currently a Mitacs subscriber, currently in a program with University of Waterloo, but you made a comment in your presentation that particularly intrigued me, and I thought it would be very helpful for our situation in particular, which is the comment was around the fact that because you have extended relationships with a wide variety of academic institutions, you have some insights as to which institutions have particularly strong capabilities or strengths in different areas. And that I'd like to be able to get access to that kind of expertise. And the background to that is that we've been engaged in some plant automation initiatives, particularly the introduction of robotics. And as we've been exploring academic facilities or schools to get connected with, it's been a little bit of a hit and miss in terms of how to approach which is the best organization to approach for this particular capability. So it would be helpful if there was a particular resource in your organization that I could reach out to for that kind of expertise, because I'm not as interested in identifying specific projects that I can work on, but it's more if I want to develop a long-term relationship with a particular organization to develop this kind of capability over time, what is the best organization that I should be connecting with? And then what are the right avenues to start making those connections? Because to date, I've been sort of hit and miss, tripping over connections through industry trade shows. And that's a very inefficient way to do it from my perspective. So if you can provide some capability there, that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah.
You go first.
No worries. Well, I think we both have a lot of perspective to share on this, of course. Great question. Fantastic question. I think the simplest thing we've seen is where companies come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for this specific expertise or talent. I just don't know where it is in Canada in the research ecosystem, which institutions have that, which like profs at these institutions are most interested, or are doing work in this space. So usually we'll ask for some basic detail, kind of like you were providing now, and then we can share it within our business development network and say, hey, we have all these business development contacts across the country that connect with these post-secondary institutions that understand it. Of course, we don't have all of that individually each, but that's why we're a network, right? So we share it with them and say, hey, I have a partner that's looking into these areas of expertise. If your institution, if there's a prof at your institution that's particularly strong in that, can you let me know and we can connect the two? So then we can get you into a discussion directly with them so that hopefully it's, streamlining that hit or miss process where you're finding out, hey, is this a great fit? Do I want to work with them? And not, oh, I don't know what to expect going into a meeting of like whether this will actually be what I'm looking to do. So hopefully that piece answers it. Sudipa, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's one more thing I think. So Ahmed's covered pretty much all of it. The other thing is if you mentioned something which was you may not have necessarily a project in mind defined, right? But you kind of want to know who does what in which area. I'm just trying to just trying to find it now so I could put it in the chat, which I haven't been able to find. We have a past projects page where you can whittle down to which subject matter, which area. Suppose you even want to go, you know what, I want to see somebody in my province who does this kind of work. well, then you can put those filters in and see who's done projects at Mitacs and who the supervisors were and where they are in the province, or even if you want to go pan-Canada, it doesn't matter. We support that anyway. But then you get to see who is in that expertise space that you can then go, oh, thank you, Ahmed. Ahmed's just popped it in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
And
Ahmed.
say, well, you know what? This person has done this kind of project. I need the same kind of expertise in the future for me to develop a project. Or if you have a project in mind, that's not a problem. For you to then reach out to that person and say, I've heard you've done a Mitacs project. This is your expertise. This is what I'm looking at. And then you can connect that way. So then it's a filter, but you get now everyone who's done that kind of work in the field that you're looking for across the entire country.
And that makes great sense. And the last little subsequent question I've got, obviously the initiative that you've got now is really a pitch the project type initiative to try and make those immediate connections. The question I have relative to what we just discussed was, I think it would be actually even perhaps more beneficial, because I'm not specifically focused on a project. How would I go identifying the appropriate Mitacs contact for me to formulate a relationship with? Is it region specific or is it industry specific? How do I find the right contact within Mitacs?
Hi, Michael. It does end up becoming a bit region specific. So if you happen to be in the GTA area, one of my colleagues, even Ahmed, we would be your point of contact. And for example, if you were looking at expertise, now I work with the University of Toronto. If you happen to be looking for technical expertise that I know, for example, and someone's just popped in the chat, so I'm going to steal that for a second, Centennial has, because I know Ahmed works primarily with the colleges and has a good relationship with them, I will pull in Ahmed to say, listen, Michael has this expertise that he's looking for. This is what he's trying to do. What can we do with Centennial? And we'll then facilitate conversation.
Perfect. So where do I get the appropriate contact information for my Mitacs representative? Is that off the central website?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think there
actually.
is a website page, right? Yeah.
Yes, and you'll see where everyone is in which location, all of us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Would you, Ahmed, be able to find that web page and then post it into the chat? Thank you, Ahmed. Yeah, on top of that too, Michael, is don't hesitate to reach out to us who are here in this presentation today. Myself as well at DAIR, we do have a database of academic profiles on researchers, on professors, their departments, their equipment, and we use that in filtering what the needs are for the projects, let's just say for the Green Fund. And we've been able to partner them with the right academic institutions to further their projects because they had one. But if you don't have a particular project right now, we can start with that. We can work with Mitacs to find somebody maybe even outside of Ontario as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. We did have a question in the chat from a lady named Valentine. She is asking, do you have to be part of a master's program, or could it be a business startup? So I guess maybe it's relating, can it be an undergraduate program? Can it be a business startup? Does it have to be master's, PhD?
So this is the beauty of it, honestly, because Valentine, thank you so much for your question. To the companies, when we work with them to scope out a project, because they'll come to us with a basic idea of a project, and then we'll ask them, what are you looking for in terms of expertise? What level of expertise are you looking for? So think not just 2-dimensional, but 3-dimensional. Are you looking for a college student, undergrad, master's, PhD, postdoc? If you're looking for someone with that kind of high technical expertise who will drive a project more like at an industrial level by themselves, a postdoc, that's great. If you need someone to just help out, say with, for example, it'd be more like how do you market your project? You need someone from Rotman, maybe an undergrad student would do, or if you want someone with a bit more heft, an MBA student would help. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for, and therefore we would try to tap that pool to see who would like to be able to work with you with the expertise that they have.
Perfect. Thank you, Sudipa, for that. Hopefully that answered your question, Valentine. She did have a follow-on question here. Could you talk about Mitacs partnership with ICANN Strategy, if you know about that one? It's a cybersecurity initiative that connects Canadian, Israeli strategic network. Is this something that you're aware of? And if so, would you be able to talk to us about it?
This may not fall directly in my wheelhouse, I'm going to be honest. It's not something, I mean, it's something I could take a look into, but off the top of my head, I don't think it rings bells for me. So we may not. Doesn't mean I can't look into it, see what we do have. Ahmed, does this ring any bells for you?
No, but that's the thing is, so there's sometimes as far as partnership, there's kind of different ways Mitacs has partnered with organizations. So some of them result in the joint application, like to NSERC, where you actually get enhanced leveraging. So if it's that kind of partnership, I'm pretty sure the answer is there is none like that, where it's like enhanced leveraging. Whether or not we have account managers that collaborate on this, or we have kind of our international strategy side of things that might be connected in. I doubt this is something that they haven't heard of. I just don't know if there's a partnership there. So we'd have to check in about that if that's of interest.
Okay, so that's good. We'll park it on the side. We can take a look at it and get back to you, Valentine. Moving forward, we do have a question again from Michael. This one would be more about the lead time that SMEs should be working against when they plan these projects with Mitacs. So in terms of, I guess, when you put an application forward, what is the sort of peer review lead time that would be required before maybe an answer would be given, and then you can start your project?
This is a great question. Ahmed, do you want me to tackle? Do you want to tackle it?
Go for it.
I want to make sure that, you know.
You're good. No, we're doing a pretty good back and forth. This is good.
We're going on the road, guys. But so just getting to your question. So what we'll do is we'll take a look. We've got various types of programming. Depending on the programming, they're similar. Depending on the programming, they have various lengths in terms of their scientific review period. They can be as short as about 6 weeks, and they could be as long as 8 to 10 weeks, depending on the programming. And the reason why Ahmed and I have not spoken specifically about each program is because we would rather talk to you about the scope of the project that you have in mind, and then we'll see which one is the right fit for you. So as short as a 6-week review time, as long as about 10 weeks review time, but that's just the scientific review period. You do have to take into account a couple of weeks on either side for us to make sure that we have all our administrative ducks in a row. So that would include getting signatures, say from the university. That takes a little time. That's sort of out of our hands. Or even the amount of time it takes for an award letter to come through, or waiting for the company funds to come to Mitacs before a project can start. So the one thing that we can really talk to is about the length of time it would take for scientific review, and that's probably the longest part. That's basically the meat and potatoes from the time of submission that you're looking at.
Just to add, for project development, of course, this is like Sudipa was saying, official submission to Mitacs. So I've seen discussions get put together within a week or two from like initial discussion to submission. They're sometimes really quick. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, where you're trying to find a partner, or you're really trying to nail down that scope for what to apply for, and kind of go from there. So it can take longer than that. I don't want to say 1 to 2 weeks is normal. It happens, but it's not as common as it might be thought of. But just keep in mind there's that project development piece, and again, that's in collaboration with the post-secondary institution as well. So that kind of again adds to kind of the concreteness of the scope probably being a fairly good fit for once you apply. So it's really a front-loaded piece. Once it's in there, we're usually doing pretty well.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for answering that. I hope that answered your question, Michael. I'm going to open it up again to anybody that has any further questions in the
Yeah,
chat
Stephen,
or the
I
Q&A.
have.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Mira.
Is there
Go right
something in
ahead.
the chat or?
No, no.
Okay. So as part of the review, I guess, do you guys select who does that review? And has there been cases where, say, one group does a review and maybe another university might say, you know what, we take that on, but one doesn't? Can that happen or?
So with review, what we do is we ask for reviewers that you would like to have for your project.
Okay.
Now, is it guaranteed that they will get it? There are other people in that research space, but we ask for arm's length reviewers. So if you happen to be at U of T, would say, please don't choose anyone from U of T to make this fair. U Calgary, domestic, of course, is better. We can work with them much faster. And then our research team on the back end, so our internal colleagues, they really take care of where this gets sent out to. So we have less visibility on that front, but you do get a say in terms of who you might like to have review your project. And also, if there's anyone who's competing professor, you get to say, I'd rather have this person not look at it as well. That's as much, I think, clarity I could provide on that front.
Okay. And then I guess my last question is, with regards to some of these ideas, is there any non-disclosure agreement that's signed, and who owns the IP in the end? Is it the sponsoring company or the university or both or neither?
I'm smiling. I'm going to let it go for it.
I got this. So with regards to, NDAs and things like that, so ideally that takes place between the company and the post-secondary institution. So we leave that up to you. Generally, what we say, especially in the applications, is you should be able to provide enough project detail without disclosing your secret sauce. So we're not asking you to say, hey, give us all the details of this thing you might want to patent, whatever, later on. It's really more about feasibility, high-level objectives, high-level processes and methodologies. It's not about, your proprietary information per se in the application, but I know that can be helpful in discussing with the institutions. So that's an agreement the partner enters with the academic institution. They all have their standard processes. They're really good at taking care of that once we connect you in. So that might not come out in the exploratory meeting, for example, where you'd need to sign an NDA for it, but that might come out of it as a next step, right? And then the second point was IP. It is, again, we defer to the academic institutions on that. Personally, from experience with the colleges, I know that pretty much across the board, the company owns the IP. The college doesn't take a stake in it, but I know each university has its own agreements. I know from my time at a university working as a student, that is not the case at the university I was at. So it was more of like a 50-50 split or another kind of agreement. So that's something that is a great question to ask in that exploratory meeting with them. I'm interested in working with you, but these are the questions. How do you handle IP? How is this going to affect, how I'm able to utilize it in the future type of thing? So that's a great question.
Okay. And one last one that popped into my mind, sorry. During the review process, is it typical that the reviewing team asks for more and more details? Does that happen? Or you said it's pretty high level, so I'm just trying to understand how detailed this review would be and what kind of, I know it's hard to answer that, but.
This is the scientific review part that I was talking about, right? Is that right?
Right, yes.
Yeah,
right.
so the good thing is when you're writing an application, you'll go back and forth with people like Ahmed and myself. We will go through the application with you, which is why we're so invested, basically, because we want to make sure that while we do have a high success rate, that yours goes through hopefully without a hitch or any minor hitches. So when we go through the application, we'll say, you know what, can you include this detail here, or this is not required, this should be expanded upon. Now, usually that works out well, and you don't really hit any hurdles when it comes to the scientific review. That being said, the reviewers may come back and say, you know what, we think this is great, and there are going to be people in your field. So while we're looking at it in terms of a proposal and what it requires, they might say, you know what, the school of thought here might not be what I agree with, or this, you need to really flesh out this method section because, you know, I don't really see it this way, or I'm not convinced. They'll come back, and then you'll be able to, you know, work on that in your proposal. Address those comments. You can provide a cover letter to say, you know, I've looked at this and I've addressed it here, and you send it right back. And then the reviewers will take a look at it again.
So it's all sort of by print. It's not a face-to-face thing, or does that happen too?
No, the reviewers will never be face to face with you. It's kind of like when you publish in a journal, right? It will
Okay.
never be a face to face. So there will be that complete separation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Spiro, for the question. Thank you, everybody in attendance here today. It looks like we're getting down to our last 3 minutes. I would like to thank Sudipa and Ahmed for doing this today and helping give all the information that we probably needed to move forward with a Mitacs application and working with DAIR as well. You know, we're here to foster those collaborations and partnerships, so we're here for you. I'm going to hand it off to Maurice to close out today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. I saw many positive comments in the chat, so much your insights and information was much appreciated. We look forward to our continued collaboration. You made a suggestion during your presentation, Sudipa, that we look forward to following up on, and we're going to keep all the attendees aware of the next steps of that wonderful collaboration that's emerging between our organizations. So thank you again very much for your time, for the valuable information, and we look forward to continuing the chat.